So, welcome back to Vet with a Mic, content driven by veteran issues. So, I thought we'd have a little fun considering it's Halloween weekend, and Halloween's my favorite holiday. Ever since I was a kid, I loved Halloween. Acting out some character was always a lot of fun. And of course, I am a huge horror movie junkie. I love all that is horror. I specifically love, a good supernatural thriller where the antagonist is some supernatural force, like a ghost or a demon. Those are always the best. So I've never really been into the type of movies where it's like some human or some flesh and blood antagonist comes to your house. Something like a premise of like The Strangers, where it's just that these three people show up to your house. Man, what a terrible choice that would be to pick a veteran. Probably be a pretty short movie. But there's no caliber that you can use on a ghost though. So I guess that's the reason why I like those type. Like, what are you gonna do? Punch in the face? Nothing you can do. But I wanted to talk about ghost stories because I think they're fascinating. I love a good ghost story. I've had a couple myself, in which I plan on sharing one, but they are so fascinating. So after we go through a couple of good ghost stories, I want to briefly tie in what psychology says about ghosts. So growing up in the South, there's obviously tons of Civil War battlefields. And I think each one of them has their own little mystery about them. But one of the ones that I heard a lot about growing up was the Chickamauga battlefield in North Georgia. So one of the famous stories, famous for that area. The story starts with some foreign dignitary. I've heard French, I've heard German, but there's just always some important person that's coming to the battlefield. I guess they're Civil War buffs. I don't know why. But they go to the battlefield, and as they're touring around the grounds in their motorcade, the party sees a group of soldiers doing maneuvers around the battlefield. And so obviously the foreign dignitary is really impressed and thinks that the park rangers have put on a show and have orchestrated this whole thing just for the dignitary's benefit. So they think the park rangers on their way out for the show. And the story always says the same thing. Like, the park rangers are confused because there was no show. There were no reenactments scheduled for the grounds that day. And of course, there's the ghosts, right? That these Civil War era soldiers were just damned for eternity to kind of walk the battleground, which is fascinating. So here's one of the explanations that I have heard, and this is not as precise for as far as science goes, but one thing that has been conceptualized is that time is not linear, and that potentially multiple events can be going on within the same space of time. Now, I'm not really sure what the physics are behind that concept, but the idea that between dimensions of existence, there can be the past and the future and the present all existing in the same space of time. So there is no past and future, but it's all in one moment, which is a mind trip. So I have heard that a potential explanation for something like a ghost phenomenon is that a person is being able to glimpse into or through the dimensions of time. So that moment where the dignitary saw the soldiers, those people were alive, quote unquote, in their own time. Really far out, kind of cool to think about. Not really sure how much meat there is there, but it's a cool premise to toy around with. So now here is my ghost story. The last bar that I worked at was previously a hotel. And so in this building, there was the ground floor, which is where we had our establishment. And then above it were 3 to 4 levels of previously hotel rooms. And I'm going to tell you, it was creepy as hell up there. Like, really creepy. Talking about something that was just right out of Silent Hill. Just at any moment, you could just hear the and things would start happening. I'm not a huge video game guy, but I've seen other people play it, and that game was pretty scary. So it was this weird kind of layout. So you had to go up underneath our actual floor to access a stairwell that went up into the main, I wouldn't say lobby, I guess it's just the kind of the grand room where the hotel rooms were. And there was this inoperable elevator too, so you could see up and down the shaft. It was really trippy. It was kind of like Silent Hill meets the Overlook Hotel. So you would go up into the top of this building, and there would just be these rows and rows and rows of rooms. I'm not sure when the hotel closed down, but so as you go through the rooms, there may have been like furniture, like bureaus, but everything was obviously pretty dusty, and there was some elements that were exposed through the floorboards were kind of rotting out. It was really trippy up there. Really dangerous. It was probably not a wise idea for us to be up there, but it was just everything that you would need for a horror movie, like a good scary movie. So I remember there's 2-3 events that happened. The first event was us being we would take a few patrons like after closing up into the abandoned hotel rooms. And when we would do that, obviously, we kind of knew our way around, and the visitors did not. But I was sent, me and another guy were sent on ahead to hide, to obviously do a jump scare for the people that we were taking up on a tour. So I remember that the signal that they were close for us to be able to jump out was that our buddy was going to whistle. He was supposed to whistle so that we could jump out of this one little room that we were hiding in. So as we were sitting there near pitch dark, just with a little bit of light coming from our cell phones, we hear a door slam from the room adjacent to us. As I just mentioned, the rooms themselves were pretty open to the elements. So the doors had a lot of moisture that was like warping stuff. So it took a little bit of oomph to get them to close. And maybe a draft would blow hard enough to slam this thing, but it slammed hard and it closed, like latched. And I remember me and the guy that were hiding, I looked at him and I said, I thought he said he was going to whistle. And the guy that was with me was almost like shaking like a leaf. It's like, he was. It was so funny. Oh. But, of course, shortly after that, they come up and we all tell them what just happened. And they thought we were just pulling their leg. Oh, we were not. We were serious. The door right next to us had just gotten slammed pretty hard. So I didn't really think much about it because I thought, okay, well, maybe there was some kind of draft or some kind of cross draw whenever. I just didn't think anything about it. So probably maybe a week or two later, this all happened within a summer period, and we were all sitting around after closing one night, and we were just talking about meaningful songs and music to us. And I mentioned that Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden had just kind of transformed me into a different place. Like the first time I heard it, it was just that really cool, and I just felt like it was, I don't know, it was just, there was something transcendent about it. I'm talking about as soon as I said that, right as those words left my mouth, the jukebox, which was silent and had been silent for hours at this point, kicks on and starts playing Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden. We all kind of like went, what the heck? That is crazy. But we just kind of wrote off, whoa, what a weird coincidence. So there's something I forgot to mention just a second ago in my initial walking around in this hotel room. There was just one Harry Potter closet, the closet that's like underneath the stairs. And I had opened it up and I saw that there was this little white woman's shoe. Looked like it was probably like from the 30s or the 40s. And it had been tossed all the way up into the corner, where the wedge comes down. Like somebody had just tossed it there and it had landed perfectly upright. And I remember thinking, man, you'd have to crawl on your belly to get to that. And I took notice of that shoe. For some reason, it resonated with me. I don't know why. Maybe because I was just thinking about how old it looked. But the last time I went up into the hotel rooms above this bar was as I was walking up through the main corridor. I turned the corner, and there sat this white shoe in the middle of the hallway. Now, this white shoe was perfectly covered with dust. If one was to touch it, it would have been smudged. But this thing, just like it was in the back of that Harry Potter closet, no one had smudged it. As far as I knew, I don't think anybody else even knew that shoe was back there, much less that somebody would have been able to get to it and get to it without smudging all the dust that had been all over the shoe. So I took that as whatever there was up in that hotel was telling me, nah, don't come up here. And you know what I did? I turned my ass around and I walked right back down. I did not stick around to figure out whether or not that was a happy sign or a positive sign. I went, nope, I'm good. I've seen this movie before. See you guys later. All right, so here's the psychological tie-in, right? You can't trust any of the things that I just told you because I can't trust what I just told you. Anytime you go to recall an event, your memory has kind of generated spots to connect dots. So although I'm pretty sure the details of that shoe are accurate, I know 100% that my brain has connected some dots for me. And it's not something that you're conscious of necessarily. It's not something that you think of. Although that can be the case. With repeated revisions of a story, your story kind of gets tighter. You pack in more details, anticipating others may poke holes in it. Every time you tell the story, it just gets that much more precise to where a person cannot refute what you're saying. And this is what I mean. I remember telling that story before, and before I said anything, I would go, now listen, I have a scientific mind. It's almost to bolster your own credibility before you tell your crazy story. So that's the kind of the psychology tie-in. So ghost stories are really cool phenomena because we generate these narratives based on maybe a small little nugget of something that happened. With each time that we retell them, they get more packed with detail. And don't get me wrong, I don't really know how aware we are of those slight alterations that we make. That's why largely eyewitness testimony in the courtroom has been discouraged, because we know that there is just so much error that happens whenever a human being is asked to recall events. They just put in stuff and they're not even necessarily aware of it, and they're convinced of their details being there that we're actually not. So ghost stories, if you add in this idea, we are so creative as a species that we're able to attend to a lot of great details, but then we also just make up our own. And it's just it's almost a wonderment of how the human brain operates. But then because we're also social creatures, when you do this in a group, when one person goes, oh my God, did you see that? Everybody will orient and confirm what you just said, even if they didn't see it. It's always more beneficial for survival to, number one, trust that someone else in your group is telling the truth when it comes to a possible predator in the grass, so to speak. So it's better to act as if they were there than to be skeptical of it and end up getting eaten. So that's kind of where the species evolved. And so obviously now in modernity, where there's not a lot of predators out there in the grasslands waiting to get us anymore, we've pretty much mastered that challenge. we still have these hard drive impulses to attend to threats in the environment, even if we're not even sure we understand them. It's better to overcorrect than undercorrect. So now when you're out there in the Halloween season, which I don't know if I mentioned this, but it is my favorite holiday, you can understand exactly why we love to be scared. We love the sensations that come along with ghost stories and horror movies. Because at some point in our development of human history, those were hardwired survival mechanisms, and we loved to feel intensity again. So I hope this was a great little fun episode for everybody. I enjoy Halloween. I enjoy talking about ghosts and horror movies. So this was a lot of fun for me. If you guys stumble upon a great ghost story or a great horror movie and you feel like sharing it with me, please, I would love to hear it. You can just send me any information through the normal socials that we talked about on the channel before. And I just want everybody to be safe this weekend and to have a great All Hallows Eve. Please dress up, go have fun, just be safe out there. And as always, however life finds you, I hope life finds you well. Until next time.